The ocean, it hides more than waves. Ships vanish without a trace. Radios go silent in the middle of the night. And sometimes the vessel drifts into port, with dinner still warm on the table, but not a single soul on board. For centuries, sailors have whispered of cursed waters, haunted decks, and cries that echo long after the living are gone. But what if I told you, some of these ships are still out there waiting, and one day, you might see one emerge from the fog, and realize you are not alone. Welcome to a new story. My name is John. I am the voiceover artist for this channel, Historia Unseen, and tonight, we set sail into the haunted mysteries of the sea. It began long ago, when the ocean was not only a path for trade, but the lifeline of empires. Every new nation that rose from the ashes of war looked to the sea as its future. Sailors became heroes, explorers became legends, and ships were more than wood and steel. They were symbols, floating monuments of pride, carrying the hopes of thousands. But the sea does not serve any nation. It takes what it wants. And sometimes it leaves behind mysteries that shape history forever. In the early years of America, when the country was still young, ships carried more than goods. They carried dreams of freedom, adventure, and sometimes fear. The coastline stretched endlessly, and beyond it, unknown waters whispered promises and warnings. One such tale began in the 18th century, a time when the birth of a nation was written not only in battlefields, but in the waves. Merchants, privateers, and explorers set sail from busy ports. Boston, New York, Charleston. Each voyage was a gamble. Storms, pirates, and the endless hunger of the sea waited for them. But sometimes it wasn't the storm or the pirates that made ships vanish. It was something else. Whispers traveled through taverns and ports of ghostly lights seen off the coast, of ships that appeared through the fog with no crew, and then melted back into the mist. Men laughed at these stories by day, but by night, alone on the deck, every creak of timber felt alive. The nation was rising, but fear traveled with it. A young country, built on courage, began to collect its own haunted legends. There was the story of the Seaflower, a merchant ship that left Boston with supplies, but weeks later drifted back, sails torn, hull scarred, and no one aboard. The cargo was untouched. The captain's log ended mid-sentence. It was as if the entire crew had walked into the sea. The people of the new nation whispered, "The ocean has claimed them." And every family who had lost a son, a father, a brother believed it. Yet the ships kept sailing, because for a nation to grow, it had to face the sea. By the 19th century, America's shipping routes stretched across the Atlantic. But with every new voyage, the legends deepened. Sailors told stories of voices carried on the wind, of lanterns swinging in empty corridors, of shadows moving across the deck when no one was there. A new identity was being born, a proud nation standing tall among empires, but its roots were soaked in the same fear of the unknown that had haunted sailors for centuries. Every great nation has a birth story, and in America, that story included its seas. For the ocean gave it life and threatened to take it away. Some said the haunted ships were not curses, but warnings, that the nation was young, reckless, daring to challenge waters it did not yet understand. But in every port, when mothers kissed their sons goodbye, they knew the risk. The sea could make a man a hero, or take him without a trace. The birth of a nation was not only about flags and battles. It was also about ships that never returned, voices that were never heard again, and mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. And perhaps that is why America's history at sea is not just proud, it is haunted. Because in the story of every great ship lies the reminder that the ocean keeps its secrets, and it never gives them back. It was a warm morning in the late 19th century when a merchant ship called the Adderley was spotted drifting off the coast. Her sails were still raised, her flag still flying, but something felt wrong, very wrong. As the rescue team rowed closer, silence covered the waters. No voices, no orders, no sound of men moving on deck, only the sea and the slow, uneasy creak of wood. When the sailors climbed aboard, they found the ship empty. The ropes were neatly tied. The meals were laid out in the galley. The captain's chair was pulled back, as if he had just stood up moments ago. But there was no crew, not a single man. This was not the first time such a thing had happened. Throughout history, ships had been found like this, wandering the ocean without the people who sailed them. It was as if the crew had simply vanished into thin air. The new nation, proud and growing, did not like such stories. They shook confidence in trade. But whispers traveled faster than the ships themselves. And soon, tales of the vanishing crew reached every tavern and dock. The logbook of the Adderley was found in the captain's quarters. The last entry was written in a rushed hand. The men are restless shadows on the water. I do not sleep. That was the last line. No explanation. No reason why an entire crew of 30 men had disappeared. Some believed they had been taken by pirates. But the cargo was untouched. Others said they had fallen to sickness. But why would they all leave their meals behind, their duties unfinished? The most terrifying belief was that something unseen had taken them, that the ocean itself had swallowed the crew and left the ship as a ghost. The Adderley was towed back to port. Families came, hoping for answers, but they found only silence. And with silence came fear. Not long after, another case shook the sailors. The Providence Star, a cargo ship bound for New York, was found drifting with torn sails. Again no crew. Again no signs of a struggle. The only clue was a half-burned candle in the captain's cabin, still warm, as if someone had blown it out just moments before the ship was discovered. The legend of the vanishing crews grew stronger. Superstitious sailors refused to board certain ships. Mothers begged their sons not to sail. But trade had to continue, and nations rise on courage, not fear. Yet even the bravest captains carried the same chill in their hearts. Because every time a ship disappeared, it returned empty, but whole, as if the sea itself was mocking them. In those years, the story of the Mary Celeste shook the world. She was found in 1872, drifting silently in the Atlantic. Her cargo was safe, her sails partly set, the lifeboat missing. But not a single man, woman, or child was aboard. The captain, his wife, the young daughter, and the entire crew were gone. The American press called it a riddle of the seas. Investigations offered theories: storms, mutiny, piracy. But nothing explained why they left so suddenly, leaving behind all personal belongings, and not even sending a distress call. The Mary Celeste became the most famous ghost ship of all time. And to this day, no one knows what happened on that voyage. The vanishing crews became part of America's maritime soul. Sailors spoke of voices calling them at night. They swore that sometimes, in the fog, they saw men on the decks of empty ships moving, waving warning, before disappearing back into shadow. For a nation still young, still building its power, these stories were a reminder. The sea was not only an opportunity, it was also a graveyard of secrets. Even as technology advanced, even as steamships replaced sails, the mystery did not end. Because men could build stronger ships, but no man could fight the silence of the ocean when it wanted to take him. And so, every sailor who left port carried the same fear. What if their ship returned without them? What if their family stood on the docks and watched an empty vessel float, carrying only memories? The legend of the vanishing crews was more than ghost stories. It was a warning etched deep into the history of the sea. A truth no captain could escape. The ocean gives, the ocean takes. And sometimes it does not return the living. It was a hot summer morning in 1947 when a faint, broken radio signal crackled across the ocean waves. The words were barely clear, but chilling enough to freeze every man who heard them. All officers dead. The message repeated again. Crew dead. Static followed. The signal grew weaker. And then one last line came through, in a trembling voice. I die. After that silence, the call came from a ship known as the Ourang Medan, a Dutch freighter sailing somewhere in the Malacca Strait between Indonesia and Malaysia. No one knew exactly where she was, but the radio message spread fast, reaching American, British, and Dutch vessels nearby. Rescue teams scrambled. A ship called the Silver Star was the first to respond. They followed the signal into calm waters until they saw it. The Ourang Medan drifted quietly, her hull dark against the bright sea. Her flag hung limp, and no one moved on deck. The crew of the Silver Star prepared themselves. But nothing could have prepared them for what they found. When they climbed aboard, death greeted them. The entire crew lay scattered across the decks, eyes wide open, faces frozen in terror, arms stretched out, as if fighting something unseen. The captain was found on the bridge, his hand gripping the wheel, his mouth open in a silent scream. Even the ship's dog was dead. The strangest detail? Not a single wound. No blood. No signs of a struggle. Just fear. The radio officer was found slumped over his set, the last man to send the message. His eyes, too, stared blankly at nothing. The rescuers felt an unnatural chill. Though the sun burned above, the deck seemed cold, lifeless, wrong. One sailor swore he felt a presence, watching from below the decks. Another claimed he heard faint whispers, though no one was speaking. The Silver Star crew decided to tow the ship back to port for investigation. But before they could, smoke began to rise from the cargo hold. Within moments, fire spread across the freighter. The rescuers barely escaped as the Ourang Medan exploded in a violent blast. The ship sank quickly, vanishing beneath the waves. With her, every clue was lost. To this day, the story of the Ourang Medan remains one of the most terrifying maritime mysteries. What killed the crew? Some say poison gas leaked from her cargo. Others whisper about chemical weapons from the war, experiments gone wrong. And then there are those who believe it was something far stranger. Some sailors spoke of unnatural cold, of hands that touched them though no one was there. A few even claimed the crew had seen something before they died, something that came from the sea itself. The words "I die" became legendary. A voice trapped forever in static. A reminder that the sea can take, without reason, without mercy. The story of the Ourang Medan spread through ports across the world. Some dismissed it as rumor, but others swore it was real. Even American intelligence reports from that time mention it. Still, no official record proves the ship ever existed. And maybe that is what makes the mystery so powerful. Because if the ship never existed, where did the radio message come from? And if it did exist, what killed every man aboard without leaving a single mark? The legend of the forbidden radio message joined the long chain of ghost ship tales. But unlike the others, this one left behind a voice. A human cry across the ocean, heard by many, denied by none. The ocean swallowed the Ourang Medan, but it could not swallow the words. All officers dead, crew dead. I die. The phrase has echoed for decades. It has haunted every sailor who has ever sat alone in a radio room at night, listening to the crackle of static, wondering if, one day, he too might hear it. And if he does, he might wonder if he is next. The ocean does not only carry merchants and warships, it also carries dreams. Passenger liners once represented the height of human pride. They were floating palaces filled with music, laughter, and luxury. But when the sea decides to write its own story, even the grandest ship can become a stage for horror. One of the most chilling legends belongs to a ship called the Queen Mary. Launched in the 1930s, she was a marvel of engineering, a giant moving city that crossed the Atlantic in style. Thousands of passengers trusted her decks. Royalty, politicians, and movie stars walked her halls. She was known as the Grey Ghost during World War II, when she carried troops across dangerous waters. But as the years passed, whispers began to spread. Whispers that the Queen Mary was more than a ship, that she was haunted. Passengers told stories of footsteps echoing in empty corridors, of voices in the night, of doors opening on their own. In the swimming pool, long after it had been drained, visitors swore they heard splashes, as if invisible swimmers still moved through the water. One cabin became infamous, Cabin B340. Guests who stayed there reported strange visions. Some said the lights flickered at night. Others claimed to see a man standing at the foot of the bed, only to vanish when the lamp was turned on. The ship's crew tried to explain it away, bad dreams, imagination, tricks of the mind. But the stories kept coming, and they were always the same. During one voyage, a young woman claimed she heard a baby crying outside her door. When she opened it, the hallway was empty. Yet the cries continued closer and closer, until they suddenly stopped. Even workers who maintained the ship after her retirement spoke of strange events. One engineer swore that deep in the boiler room, he saw a shadow moving, though no one else was there. Another worker refused to go below deck at night, saying he felt watched the moment he stepped down the iron stairs. The most famous story came from World War II. While serving as a troopship, the Queen Mary collided with a smaller British vessel, the HMS Curacao. Hundreds of men died in the freezing water that day. Survivors believe their spirits followed the ship, forever bound to the steel that carried them to their deaths. Decades later, visitors to the Queen Mary, now a hotel and museum, still report seeing soldiers marching on the decks at night. Some hear the sound of running boots. Others claim to see men in uniform staring silently into the dark. One tourist told of entering a hallway and seeing a group of passengers dressed in 1940s clothing. They smiled politely, then vanished before her eyes. The ship had become more than a legend. It was living history and haunted history. But the Queen Mary is not alone. Other passenger ships across the world carry similar tales. The SS Valencia, a Canadian passenger steamer, wrecked in 1906, left behind one of the strangest. When she struck rocks in a storm, more than 100 people died. Years later, fishermen swore they saw her again, drifting silently near Vancouver Island, filled with ghostly figures waving for help. They rowed toward the ship, but dissolved into the fog before they reached her. Even now, sailors say the Valencia reappears in storms, the phantom ship, replaying her final night forever. The haunted passenger ship is not only a tale of death. It is a reminder of how fragile life is, even in luxury. Passengers once danced, sang, and dreamed of their future. But some never reached their destination. And perhaps their spirits never left the decks. For a nation rising in power, these ships were symbols of progress. But progress cannot erase fear. Because every shadow in the hull, every whisper in the night, reminds us that the sea does not forget. The Queen Mary still rests today in California, visited by thousands each year. Tourists laugh, take photos, and enjoy the history. But many leave with a story, a voice they heard when no one was near, a face in a mirror that was not their own. The ocean carried her through storms and wars, but in the end she carries something far more powerful, the souls of the past. And when you walk her decks and hear footsteps behind you, do not turn around, because if you do, you might see the face of someone who was never supposed to return. War changes everything, even the sea. During World War II, oceans became battlegrounds. Passenger ships carried soldiers. Cargo ships carried weapons and food. Warships patrolled day and night. But even in war, the sea kept its secrets. And some of the strangest mysteries of the ocean happened during those years. In 1941, a British ship vanished while sailing across the North Atlantic. She was well-armed, protected, and carrying hundreds of men. Yet one morning, another vessel spotted only floating debris, life rafts turned upside down, and a trail of oil spreading across the water. No survivors, no sign of a battle, no explanation. It was as if the ship had been swallowed whole. Other stories came from American sailors. They spoke of strange lights in the sky during night patrols. Lights that moved too fast to be planes, too bright to be flares, too silent to be anything known. Some called them Foo Fighters. At first, officers laughed at the name. But when reports kept coming, the laughter stopped. Pilots swore the glowing orbs followed their aircraft, danced around them, and then vanished into the clouds. Naval ships reported the same. Balls of fire hovered above their decks, then slipped beneath the waves, disappearing like ghosts. Were they enemy weapons? Or something older, something the war had awakened? In 1943, another case stunned the American Navy. A destroyer on patrol reported its compass spinning wildly. The crew grew panicked. Their equipment failed. For hours, the ship drifted, lost in calm waters. When the compasses returned to normal, they realized they had been pulled miles off course, with no memory of how. Some sailors whispered about a magnetic storm. Others claimed they had seen faint shadows in the fog, like the outline of ships that were not there. And then came the story of the USS Cyclops. Though it was not wartime when she vanished, her tale became tied to military history forever. In 1918, the massive Navy ship left Barbados, carrying coal and over 300 men. She never reached her destination, No distress call. No wreckage. No trace of the crew. It was the single largest loss of life in U.S. Navy history outside combat. To this day, no one knows what happened. Some believe she was sunk by a German submarine, but no records confirm it. Others say she broke apart in a storm. Yet the sea offered no wreckage. And then came the strangest theory, that the Cyclops vanished inside what sailors call the Devil's Triangle. A place where compasses fail, ships disappear, and the ocean swallows everything. World War II created more mysteries than it solved. Entire convoys vanished under fog. Warships disappeared with no enemy contact. Pilots were lost over calm seas, their last words filled with confusion. My instruments are going crazy. I can't tell which way is up. These reports became legends. Some believed it was the chaos of war. Others thought the ocean itself had turned against mankind. But there were stories the governments never wanted told. Stories of sailors who swore they saw ghost ships during battle. In the middle of gunfire, explosions, and chaos, they spotted vessels that did not belong. Ships from another time. Silent, watching, and then gone. Even after the war ended, the mysteries remained. Fishermen off the East Coast swore they saw abandoned warships drifting in the fog. When they approached, the ships vanished. Divers searching wrecks claimed they heard voices beneath the waves. Voices speaking languages long forgotten. For the young nations that emerged from war, these stories were unsettling. They wanted to believe in progress, in victory, in control. But the ocean reminded them that no one controls it. The truth is simple. War may explain some vanishings, bombs, torpedoes, fire, but not all. Not the ships that returned without crews. Not the planes that reported glowing orbs. Not the compasses that spun without reason. Some mysteries remain locked away, buried under classified files, or drowned deep in the sea. But sailors know. They whisper the stories at night, when the waves grow calm. They know war leaves more than scars. It leaves questions no man can answer. The sea remembers what the world wants to forget. And sometimes it shows us just enough to remind us how powerless we are. Even the strongest navies, even the greatest nations, must bow before the silence of the ocean. Because in war or in peace, the sea takes what it wants. And it never explains why. Some ships are remembered not for a single disaster, but for a lifetime of bad luck. Every voyage ends in tragedy. Every captain meets misfortune. And sailors whisper that the ship itself is cursed. One of the most infamous was the SS Bachamo. Launched in the early 20th century, she began as a proud cargo ship, carrying furs, timber, and goods across the icy waters of the Arctic. But soon, the sea marked her with a strange fate. In 1931, she became trapped in heavy ice near Alaska. The crew abandoned her, believing she would sink. Yet weeks later, she was seen drifting, perfectly afloat. And not just once. For the next 40 years, sailors and hunters claimed to see her, moving silently across frozen waters, with no crew. Always drifting, always escaping capture. They called her the ghost ship of the Arctic. Some swore they saw figures moving on her deck. Others claimed she disappeared into storms, as if the ice itself was protecting her. Even when salvage teams tried to board her, she would vanish, carried away by the sea. The Bachamo became a legend of bad luck. Every ship that attempted to tow her met with disaster, storms, accidents, broken lines. It was as though the ocean itself wanted her free. Her final sighting came in 1969, drifting once again. And then she was gone. To this day, no wreck has been found. But she was not the only cursed vessel. The SS Ourang Medan, with her chilling radio message, became another name sailors whispered with dread. Some said anyone who spoke too often of her fate invited misfortune. Ports refused to record her name. To speak it aloud was to call death upon your own ship. And then there was the Edmund Fitzgerald. Though modern, she carried the aura of a curse. Launched in 1958, she was the largest ship on the Great Lakes. She was called the pride of the American side. But sailors who worked aboard her spoke of a strange unease. Some said the ship groaned louder than others. Others claimed her name was unlucky from the start. In November of 1975, during a fierce storm, the Fitzgerald vanished on Lake Superior. No distress call. No warning. Only a sudden silence. When searchers found her wreck, she was split in two on the bottom of the lake. All 29 men aboard were gone. To this day, no one knows why she sank so quickly. Theories range from structural failure to a rogue wave. But sailors believe the Fitzgerald was cursed, another ship marked for tragedy from the beginning. Legends also tell of a Flying Dutchman. Not one ship, but a ghostly vision seen by sailors for centuries. A phantom vessel, her sails glowing, her crew pale and lifeless. She is said to appear in storms, a warning of doom. Those who see her are believed to suffer misfortune soon after. Even great leaders spoke of her. In 1881, Prince George of Wales, the future King George V of England, reported seeing the Flying Dutchman. 13 men on his ship saw it too. Hours later, the sailor who first spotted her fell to his death. The curse had claimed another victim. For sailors, cursed ships are more than legends. They are warnings, signs that not every vessel is meant to cross the seas. Some are marked from their birth, doomed to tragedy, their names whispered in fear. Nations tried to ignore such tales. Shipbuilders denied curses. Captains mocked the stories in the daylight. But at night, in the endless silence of the ocean, every creak, every shadow, every strange sound reminded them. What if their ship was next? Because a curse does not need proof. It only needs belief. And sailors believed. They believed some ships were alive, with souls darker than the sea itself. When a ship sailed too long with misfortune, men refused to serve on her. Mothers begged their sons to stay away. Some captains would not even say her name, fearing the ocean was listening. The sea has no memory, men said. But cursed ships proved otherwise. They carried their own history, their own fate, until the waves finally claimed them. And perhaps that is the truest curse of all, that long after a ship is gone, her story lingers. Her name is still whispered, and her shadow still sails through the fog, searching for the next to join her. The ocean has no master, no king, no nation. It gives life. It builds empires. It carries dreams. But it also takes, and it never explains why. For centuries, sailors have told stories of ships that vanish, crews that disappear, voices that echo across the waves. Every nation has its own legends, but the mysteries are always the same. Empty decks, silent radios, ghostly lights, and questions that no man can answer. In America, these mysteries became part of its history. The birth of the nation was written not only in battles and flags, but in the sea itself. Because while men fought for freedom on land, the ocean reminded them that freedom had a price. From the Mary Celeste drifting without her crew, to the Ourang Medan sending her final, terrifying message, to the Bachamo wandering for decades like a ghost, to the Edmund Fitzgerald sinking without warning in the heart of a storm. The stories never end. Even today, in the age of satellites and GPS, ships still vanish. Signals are lost. Boats are found adrift with no one aboard. Technology cannot stop the silence of the ocean when it decides to strike. Some blame storms. Some blame pirates. Some blame mistakes made in the dark. But the ocean keeps its secrets. And sometimes those secrets rise again, like whispers from the deep. Divers tell stories of strange sounds beneath the waves. Knocks, cries, even laughter. Fishermen swear they have seen ghost ships glowing in the mist. Tourists on cruises claim to hear footsteps in the night when no one is there. Scientists may dismiss them. Governments may deny them. But the sea does not care for science or denial. It only cares for silence. Every wave hides a story. Every fog hides a shadow. And every ship that leaves port may carry its men, but it does not promise to return them. Sailors know this. They whisper it in taverns. They pray it at night. Because every voyage is a gamble. Every deck is a stage. And sometimes the ocean writes the ending before the journey begins. The endless sea of mysteries is not a single tale. It is hundreds, thousands, stretching back to the dawn of history. Ships lost without a trace. Messages sent in fear. Legends passed down through generations. Some stories are true. Some are myths. But all of them share one thing. They remind us that man may sail the seas, but he will never rule them. The ocean is vast. It is older than nations, older than kings, older than the world we know. And perhaps some of the mysteries are not meant to be solved, because if the sea truly revealed its secrets, what would we find? A vanished crew, frozen in terror. A captain still gripping his wheel in death. A radio officer sending his last words into the void. Or perhaps something darker. Something not human. Something waiting just beyond the waves. And so, the stories continue. They will always continue. Because as long as ships sail, as long as men dream of crossing the horizon, the ocean will take its share. It will keep its silence. And sometimes, it will let us see just enough to remind us. The ocean does not forget. The ocean does not forgive. The ocean does not explain. It only waits. So the next time you stand on the shore and see a ship fade into the fog, ask yourself, will it return? Or will it become another mystery, lost to the endless sea?